What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be going over what the best loadouts are right now in Fortnite Zero Build. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what your favorite setup is. So I think for this season, there's a lot of choices. The balance this season, I think, is a lot better than what we've seen in previous seasons. So I'm going to be going over, starting with a more generic, like 3-gun loadout, and then getting into a more 2-gun loadout, which has more situational items. The first more generic loadout, like I talked about, is going to be your standard AR, shotgun, SMG, heals, and then one utility item. If you're only carrying one utility item this season in Zero Build, I think you definitely want it to be shockwaves or the shockwave launcher. They're pretty interchangeable. Given the option, I would prefer to carry the shockwave launcher because you can carry so many rockets. But shockwave launcher, they're pretty interchangeable. For your AR, I think you want to go the twin mag AR. I think it's just hands down the best assault rifle. If you get your hands on the Foundation's MK7, that can be an option. It was nerfed last week, and it wasn't the biggest nerf, but I thought the twin mag and the MK7 were already pretty close. So with this nerf being added, I definitely think I would rather take the twin mag if I am going to be going for this more traditional setup, because it is much better at range than the MK7 is. As far as shotguns go, I think if you're going to be carrying three weapons like this, you're probably going to want to carry the pump. And then for the SMG, the combat SMG, I think is the better of the two SMGs. Earlier on in the season, I was preferring the burst sub, and last season, I didn't really care for the combat SMG, but they did something to the aim assist on it this season. It feels a lot better than how it felt last season on controller, at least. So sharp tooth combat SMG combo is ridiculous. The infiltrator shotgun and the Maven shotgun are good, but if I'm going to be carrying 3 weapons, like if I'm going to carry the SMG, then I'm going to want to be using the sharp tooth. It just kind of is how it is. The breacher shotgun is another choice you can do here. And that's fine. I just don't really like the slug nature of it. And then the same goes for the charge shotgun. If you get your hands on it, you can slot it into this loadout and it'll do just fine. But, you know, with the mythics being random this season, it's tough to go by. So the first more generic setup that I'm going to recommend is going to be shockwave grenades, the twin mag AR, the sharp tooth shotgun, the combat SMG, and then your choice of heals. The slurp juice, I think, is the best healing item in the game, and it has been since it was added. However, last week they made it more inconvenient to get. Each source of slurp juice now drops half of what it used to. So in solos, if you want to get 2 slurps, you have to get 2 radio towers, or radio tower and combat cache and island, multiple combat caches. You need to get 2 sources of slurp juice to have a full stack, and this is how it will go in every mode. It just changes like how many it drops. Like in squads, it used to drop 8, now it drops 4, so basically 1 for each person, or 2 full stacks depending on how you want to distribute that. So I think slurps are still good, and I definitely will take them if I think I'm going to be able to get more in game. So like if I just got a radio tower and we got the slurp juice, I'm going to take that in hopes that when I get combat cache and third zone, then we have 2 slurps and we have a full stack. And then maybe I use one, we get island, we're good to go. But if we're like past the point of island in the game, like let's just say we're 5th or 6th zone, and I have the choice between 1 slurp or exotic slap splashes, I'm definitely going to take those exotic slaps. You could argue the slaps are better anyways, but how I kind of decide whether or not I'm going to carry slurps or some other healing item is really dependent on how likely I think I am to get more slurps, and that, you know, mostly depends on what stage you are in the game. So if I'm in like the early to mid game, I definitely want to take the slurps because I think my odds of finding more are decently high if that's something I want to do. You know, you can go get your cache, you can go get island if that's something you want to do. But once you get really late into the game where you're past island, your likelihood of getting slurps isn't the greatest. Some people carry it, but it isn't the greatest. So I'll take slurps. They're good, but you know, just keep in mind if you're super late into the game, you might not get any more. There's not as many sources of it, and more. Everybody in the lobby is going to have less because of last week's update. So again, the standard loadout, twin mag AR, sharp tooth shotgun, combat SMG, slurps, and shockwaves. Very good, very basic. If you've been playing the game for several seasons, this is probably just going to be the first thing you kind of gravitate to. And I think this still works. There's some other choices that we're going to get into, but I think this still works fine. I've won several games with it in the past 2 days. And with yesterday's update, the Deku Smash was vaulted, and the crates that would drop the Deku Smash and the Ice Wall no longer drop, so there's going to be less players that have the Ice Wall. The Ice Wall is still in the game, but there's going to be less of it to go around, and that kind of makes fights play out around it less. Like if you get it, you can still use it and it's very good, but if you guys played when it initially got added, it felt like everybody had this thing in game. And you would get games where, like, if you didn't have an ice wall, it's going to be pretty hard for you to play. But with less people having the ice wall, your need to carry it, I feel like, isn't as high. It's still a great item, but the need isn't as much there because there's less of it spawning on the map. And that gets into the second loadout, which is going to be a 2-gun setup and double utility and heals. Again, you're going to want shockwaves. I think they're just a great item. You always want these in Zero Build. Using 2-gun gets tricky, though, because there's a lot of choices here. You basically have to give up something. So I've been using Sharptooth Twin Mag AR for a 2-gun setup. I get asked about this a bunch when I'm streaming. People are like, isn't the combat SMG a better spray weapon than the Twin Mag AR? And it's like 100%. If you're, you know, within like 2 meters of your opponent and you're spraying them, you would much rather have the combat SMG. But like the benefit of this setup isn't going to just be, you know, being dominant at any one range. It's like the added options you have with utility. If anybody's played Magic the Gathering, that original kind of setup I recommended would be more of like a red deck where it's just like pretty aggro. You have something good for every type of fight and you're just going to worry about fighting. The second setup with the added utility is going to be more of like a blue control setup where you're not as lethal with some of your weapons, but you have more options because of that added utility. And if you play off of that properly, it should help you get wins. So Twin Mag AR, Sharptooth Pump, comboing them can be kind of awkward. It's not the greatest spray weapon by any means, but if you play well off of cover and you know you have the ice wall, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment, you can definitely get by with this setup. I think you just have to play a bit smarter. If you try to play this setup like you have the combat SMG and you're just trying to barrel stuff opponents, that's not going to be good. If you play, you know, smarter and, you know, more controlled, I think this can work really well. One area it does kind of fall flat, though, is you have control over how you play. You don't necessarily have control over how the opponents play. And if you're playing somebody using an exotic Maven or somebody that has Sharptooth combat SMG and they get on you and they're being very aggro, it's going to be hard for you to deal with that. So I'd recommend trying to, if you're using this setup and someone shockwaves at you and you don't already have them weak, you're probably just going to want to shockwave back and put another ice wall. Which we'll get to in a moment. One final thing I want to say is that if you get the exotic Maven, the heisted Maven, you definitely want to use that in this setup. This 2-gun setup gets a lot better when you get the exotic Maven. And even if I am using that 3-gun setup like we talked about before and I come across the exotic Maven, I'm just going to transition into the 2-gun setup because the exotic Maven is incredible up close. It shores up kind of the weakness of not having a spray weapon, and it's just very good. So, and you could get by using a normal Maven or an infiltrator shotgun here. I just don't like those shotguns as much, and I am somewhat competent at comboing Sharptooth and Twin Mag AR, so that gets the job done for me, but I definitely will take the exotic Maven. So for this secondary setup, so far, we have the Sharptooth shotgun, or the exotic Maven, the Twin Mag AR, slurps, and shockwaves. So our final item is going to be another utility item. I talked about the ice wall. I think it's incredible. It's harder to get now. It's more random, but when you're able to get it, just being able to create cover wherever you want constantly is very powerful. You also have the added option of being able to use this to knock people away from things. One of my favorite things to do when I have this set up is like beam somebody, push them, place another ice wall that'll usually kind of knock them forward into an open area, and then you can just swap to your shotgun, maybe pump them back up to the cover. Again, the way you want to play off this setup is more around your ice wall and around your cover, and the cooldown on it is very low, so you can just keep spamming this over and over again. The ice wall is very good. It's a very just situationally powerful item in Zero Build, and if you play around it well, you can kind of invalidate your kind of close range weakness of not having an SMG if you are using the Sharptooth. Another potential utility item is going to be bunkers. It's the same way. The main kind of disadvantage when it comes to bunkers versus ice wall is I feel like the bunkers, you have to worry more about how you throw them, whereas with the ice wall, you could just tap the button and it's out there. And then bunkers are also a resource. Every time you use it, it's gone, or it's there, but you know, it doesn't recharge over time. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, is that I think bunkers are probably a better cover item than the ice wall, but they're not as good at like knocking your opponent's back off of things. And also they're not unlimited, and that is definitely something to be considered, because I talked about the close range kind of shortcomings of this setup potentially if you don't have the exotic Maven, and what I like to do is just kind of shockwave away and then place another ice wall, maybe get some beams on them and then push. You just always want to have opening tags when you're using this 2-gun setup. You don't ever want to be getting in a close range fight dry, and the bunkers can be kind of limiting in that, because you might not necessarily want to just waste all your bunkers on one fight, whereas like if you have to use several ice walls over the course of a fight, it's no big deal. The final 2 items that can slot into the setup just fine, I think, are going to be the EMP grenades and the sticky grenade launcher. So they work kind of the same way. When you have shockwaves and this, you can shockwave yourself up, throw 2 EMPs, that's 140 shield damage on the opponent. It's going to be an easy kill for you to clean up. And then the sticky launcher is kind of the same way. You can shockwave yourself up and shoot it down. Last week, its fire rate did get nerfed, so it's not as good at that. Also counters the ice wall and bunkers somewhat well. If you are playing off a bunker, playing off an ice wall, and you have somebody spamming you with this, I feel like you definitely just want to get some AR tags on them while they're trying to rocket your cover, and then hopefully just push off that. If you just stand there and let them destroy your stuff, it's not going to go well for you. So that added utility option can be ice wall, bunkers, sticky launcher, or EMP grenades, and I feel like all of those choices are very fine, and that's one of the nice things about this second loadout. There's so many utility options this season that are actually very good and very worth using, that this second option can kind of be tweaked and changed a lot and be very fun and very good and give you a lot of different ways to play the game. So the first loadout that I recommend, the more generic one, is going to be twin mag AR, sharp tooth shotgun, combat SMG, shockwaves, and slurps. And then the second loadout is going to be twin mag AR, sharp tooth shotgun, or exotic maven. You can also go to those other shotguns if you want. Slurps, shockwaves, and then like the ice wall or something. And one of my preferred kind of playstyles recently has kind of been a hybrid of the two, where I just kind of use the first one and then if I come across an exotic maven, I kind of transition into that second one, and that has worked out pretty well for me the past few days. And then one final thing I want to talk about is if you are someone that wants to snipe, it's going to be a similar setup where you're going to have shotgun, slurps, shockwave, sniper, and then your final weapon is going to be probably between a twin mag AR or maybe even the combat SMG. If you're decent at controlling the recoil of the combat SMG, it can do fine up to like medium-ish range. And, you know, if you're good at sniping, you have the sniper for those like medium to long range fights. So if you are very good at sniping, you could go with the combat SMG here. You could also go for something like the exotic suppressed pistol, the shadow tracker, I think works quite well in a setup like this. And then maybe even the Havoc AR. I don't think it's very good. It got buffed last week, but it can also kind of serve a more close to medium-ish range purpose if you do want to snipe. So I don't snipe very much, but if I really wanted to snipe, I would probably run like sniper, shotgun, combat SMG, heals, and then shockwaves. But that is gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting. There's a lot of options for this season. The balance, I think, is very good. There's a few very powerful items for sure, but I just feel like the options we have to use are actually really good because there's so many really, really solid utility items like the ice wall, bunker, EMP, sticky launcher, all that stuff. Let me know what you like using down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.